just as the wedding guests settled into their seats, eager to witness the final moments of a perfect ceremony. The grand doors at the back of the hall suddenly burst open. All eyes turned toward the entrance as a woman stumbled inside, her clothes torn and her hair messy, her breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. She looked around desperately, as if searching for someone who was the only thing keeping her grounded in that moment. The chatter died instantly. The bride's smile faltered. The groom's face, once calm and composed, suddenly drained of color. Sarah had just crashed the wrong wedding, but little did anyone know this unplanned intrusion would change everything. Sarah's heart pounded as she moved cautiously down the aisle. Her eyes locked on the groom, David, standing tall in his tuxedo, his hand holding the hand of the radiant bride. Yet, David's gaze was fixed on Sarah, a flicker of disbelief and recognition washing over him. The crowd held its breath. No one spoke, unsure whether to intervene or simply watch this strange moment unfold. Sarah's mind raced as she approached. Years of pain and confusion threatened to overwhelm her, but her legs moved forward despite the chaos inside her. She needed to see David. There was something she had to say, something that could not wait another second. Her voice barely above a whisper. She called his name. David's eyes widened, his hand trembling as he loosened his grip on the bride's hand. The bride's face changed from joy to shock, then to hurt, as she realized what was happening. The room grew thick with tension. Sarah's unexpected arrival had cast a shadow over what was supposed to be a celebration of new beginnings. Guests exchanged uneasy glances. Some leaned in, whispering, trying to make sense of the situation. Others looked away, uncomfortable with the raw emotions suddenly exposed in front of them. Sarah's disheveled appearance and tear-streaked face told a story all their own. A story of love lost and possibly found again. David took a step forward, eyes never leaving Sarah's. His voice was hoarse as he finally spoke. "Sarah, I didn't expect to see you here." The bride, standing frozen and vulnerable, watched as the man she was about to marry seemed torn between the past and the present. It was a moment charged with unspoken memories and unresolved feelings. Sarah swallowed hard and took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I had to find you," she said quietly. "I thought I lost you forever. I thought I lost everything." Her voice cracked under the weight of those words, revealing years of silence and unanswered questions. David's face softened as if the years between them had vanished in an instant. But the bride's tearful gaze reminded him of the life he was about to begin with someone else. The room was filled with a mixture of heartbreak and hope, a bittersweet tension that held everyone captive. Sarah's presence was more than an accident. It was a turning point, a moment that forced everyone in that room to confront the fragile line between past regrets and future promises. As the seconds stretched on, it became clear that this wedding would not proceed as planned. The story they were all witnessing was no longer about the couple standing at the altar. It was about a love that refused to be forgotten, even in the face of a new beginning. The guests sat in stunned silence. The officiant hesitated, unsure whether to continue or call the ceremony to a halt. The bride wiped a tear from her cheek, struggling to maintain her composure. David's gaze remained locked with Sarah's, his expression torn between duty and desire. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached out, but not for the groom. Instead, she clutched a small, worn envelope from her pocket. It was the last piece of their story, a letter David never received, a letter that might explain everything. The room waited breathless as she slowly handed it to him. David took the letter with shaking hands, unfolding it carefully. His eyes scanned the faded words, his emotions swirling like a storm beneath his calm exterior. The letter revealed years of missed chances, misunderstandings, and a love that was never truly over. As the first tears fell from David's eyes, the crowd finally understood. The woman who crashed this wedding was not just a stranger. She was the missing piece of his heart, the echo of a past he never stopped loving. And now, in front of everyone, he had to decide: honor the vows he was about to make or follow the love that had never left him. The tension in the room was palpable. No one dared to speak, fearing that any word might shatter the fragile hope that lingered between them. Sarah's unexpected entrance had rewritten the story of the day, and no one could predict how it would end. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The room remained frozen as David's eyes welled with tears, the letter still trembling in his hands. Murmurs swirled like a gentle storm around the edges of the silence, but no one dared interrupt the fragile moment. Sarah stood quietly, her chest rising and falling with nervous breaths. The bride's face was a portrait of shock and confusion, her eyes darting between David and Sarah as if trying to understand a story she had never heard before. Then, slowly, the bride's smile disappeared, replaced by a shadow of doubt. She stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper, but firm with a quiet strength. "David, who is she?" Her question hung in the air, fragile but demanding an answer. The guests leaned in, sensing that the truth was about to unfold. David looked at the bride, then back at Sarah. His hand still gripped the letter tightly. "Her name is Sarah. She was my first love, the woman I thought I lost forever." His voice was soft, but every word carried the weight of years spent wondering what might have been. "We were torn apart by circumstances no one could control. I never stopped thinking about her." The bride's eyes filled with tears, but she held her ground. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of hurt and disbelief. "Why didn't you say any of this before?" David sighed, his shoulders slumping under the weight of regret. "Because I wanted to move on. Because I thought the past was behind me. But seeing her here now it's clear that some wounds never fully heal." Sarah took a tentative step closer. "David, I didn't come here to ruin your day. I only wanted to find you to explain." Her voice cracked, revealing the pain she had carried in silence for so long. "The letter I gave you, it was supposed to reach you years ago. It held the truth, why we had to part ways." The guests listened in silence, their eyes fixed on the couple, who were no longer just a bride and groom, but two souls tangled in a story of love and loss. The bride's expression softened, but the hurt remained. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "So what happens now?" she asked quietly. David looked at Sarah, then back at the bride. The choice before him was impossible. His heart was torn between the future he had planned and the past that still held him captive. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "But I do know that I can't just pretend this never happened." Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I never stopped loving you, David. I thought you felt the same, but I was wrong. Or maybe we were both just too scared to face the truth." The bride wiped her tears away, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "If you need time to figure this out, then take it. I won't stand in the way of something that means so much to you." David looked at the bride with gratitude and sorrow, then turned back to Sarah. "We need to talk. To really talk. To see if what we had can still be." Sarah smiled faintly through her tears. "I want that more than anything." The atmosphere in the room shifted as the tension began to ease, replaced by a fragile hope. The guests started to whisper softly, some nodding in understanding, others still processing the emotional upheaval. The bride took a step back, allowing David and Sarah the space they needed. She gave them a small, sad smile, then turned away, her heart heavy, but her spirit strong. It was a painful decision, but one made with grace and respect. David reached out and took Sarah's hand, their fingers intertwining like a promise of new beginnings. For the first time in years, hope flickered between them, fragile but real. As the guests began to settle, many wiped away tears. The wedding was no longer about a ceremony. It had become a story about love, forgiveness, and second chances. Everyone in the room felt they had witnessed something extraordinary, a reminder that sometimes life doesn't follow the path we expect, but it can lead us exactly where we need to be. Outside the hall, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the town. Inside, two hearts began to heal, starting a new chapter neither of them could have predicted. David and Sarah found a quiet corner of the wedding venue, away from the stunned guests and whispered conversations. The hum of voices faded into the background as they faced each other, both carrying the weight of years they hadn't spoken. David looked at Sarah, the same woman he had loved so deeply, yet whose absence had shaped his life in ways he was only now beginning to understand. His heart pounded, torn between guilt and hope. "I don't even know where to start," David said, his voice rough with emotion. "So much time has passed, and yet, being here with you, it's like none of it ever really went away." He searched her eyes, hoping to find some sign that the feelings he'd kept hidden still lived there too. Sarah swallowed hard, steadying herself. "I never stopped thinking about you either. Every day felt like a battle, wondering if you were okay, if you had moved on. But the silence between us was the hardest part." Her voice cracked with vulnerability. "That letter. I wrote it to explain everything, to finally make sense of why I disappeared. I thought if you understood, maybe we could have found each other again sooner." David unfolded the letter again, running his fingers over the faded words. "You told me about the accident. The phone never reached me. I thought you had given up or worse, forgotten." He shook his head in disbelief. "All these years I carried this guilt, this emptiness. I tried to move on, but something inside me stayed frozen in the past." Sarah reached out and touched his hand lightly. "It wasn't your fault. It was a cruel twist of fate. But we're here now, and that means something." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I know this isn't simple. You're about to marry someone else, and I'm crashing into your life uninvited. But I couldn't keep pretending you were just a memory." David nodded slowly. "I'm glad you came, even if it means everything changes." He paused, looking down. "I've been honest with myself for a long time. There's always been this part of me waiting for you." His voice grew softer. "But what about the life I'm about to start with her? The promises I made?" Sarah's gaze dropped, the reality of their situation settling heavily between them. "I don't expect you to make a decision now. I'm not asking you to choose me over her. I just want a chance to see if we can find something real again. No lies, no misunderstandings." She smiled faintly. "Just the truth, whatever that may be." David took a deep breath, feeling the years of confusion and pain slowly unraveling. "I want that too. But it won't be easy. We'll have to face a lot, questions, judgments, the mess we left behind." He looked into her eyes, hope mingling with fear. "Are you ready for that?" Sarah nodded firmly. "I am. Because losing you once was the hardest thing I've ever faced. I won't let fear keep us apart again." They sat in silence for a moment, letting their shared resolve settle. Outside, the distant murmur of the wedding guests reminded them of the life waiting just beyond this room, a life filled with decisions neither of them had planned for. David reached for Sarah's hand again, this time holding it tightly. "Whatever happens next, I'm glad you're here. For the first time in years, I feel like maybe there's a chance for us." He looked up, determination shining in his eyes. "We'll have to take it one step at a time." Sarah smiled through tears. "One step at a time." She squeezed his hand, a promise and a plea wrapped into one. Back in the main hall, The guests slowly resumed their conversations, but the atmosphere had shifted. The story they had witnessed was no longer just about a wedding. It was about lost love rediscovered and the courage to face uncertain futures. The bride had quietly left the venue, choosing to give David and Sarah the space to figure out their tangled hearts. As the sun set outside, casting a golden glow over the town, David and Sarah stood together, ready to face the unknown. Their past was complicated, their future uncertain. But one thing was clear: they were no longer alone in their journey. The story of the woman who crashed the wrong wedding had become a story about second chances, forgiveness, and the power of love to endure even the most impossible odds. And in that quiet room, amid the fading echoes of a day turned upside down, two hearts began to find their way home. David stood by the window, staring out as the last guests trickled away from the venue. The weight of the day pressed heavily on his chest. He could still feel Sarah's trembling hand in his. The way her eyes had searched his for answers he wasn't sure he could give. The reality was settling in. Everything he thought he knew about his future had been thrown into doubt. His bride had left quietly, her footsteps soft but deliberate as she walked away from the man she thought she was going to marry. David didn't blame her. He felt the sting of betrayal and heartbreak himself. But his heart was divided, torn between a life carefully planned and the unexpected chance to reclaim a love he'd thought lost forever. Sarah's voice broke through his thoughts. "David, I'm sorry for crashing in like this." She stepped closer, her eyes full of remorse, but also hope. "I never meant to hurt anyone. Not you, not her, not myself." Her breath caught. "But I had to come. I had to know if there was still a chance." He turned to face her, the room suddenly feeling both too big and too small. "You didn't ruin anything," he said quietly. "You just reminded me of something I forgot to admit. I never stopped loving you." His voice cracked with the weight of years spent hiding the truth. "But this isn't easy. It never is with us." Sarah nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I know. We lost so much time. And now now we have to figure out if we can build something new from the pieces left behind." She reached out, brushing a stray hair from his forehead. "Are you willing to try?" David hesitated, the memories flooding back, the laughter, the fights, the promises they once made under a sky full of stars. "I want to," he said finally, "but I don't want to hurt anyone else in the process." Sarah took a step back, giving him space. "Neither do I. That's why we need to be honest. No secrets, no running away. Just the truth, no matter how hard it is." Her voice was steady now, filled with a quiet strength he hadn't seen in years. David nodded, feeling a small spark of hope ignite. "Then let's start with that. No more silence." He pulled the letter from his pocket and looked at it again, the faded words that had reopened a door he thought was closed. This letter, it's a reminder that sometimes life's biggest surprises come when you least expect them. Sarah smiled softly. And that love, even when tested by time and distance, can still find a way. Outside, the night had fallen, and the world seemed to hold its breath along with them. Two people, bound by a past neither could forget, standing at the edge of a future that was uncertain but filled with possibility. David reached for Sarah's hand once more, their fingers intertwining like a promise. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Sarah squeezed his hand gently. Together. Back in the empty hall, the faint scent of flowers lingered in the air, a reminder of what had almost been, and what might still be. The story that began with a wedding crashing had evolved into something far more profound, a chance to rewrite a love story that refused to end. As they stood side by side, the night wrapping around them like a gentle embrace, David and Sarah understood that some loves aren't meant to be forgotten. They're meant to be rediscovered. And sometimes the hardest moments lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Days passed since the wedding day that had turned everything upside down, yet David and Sarah found themselves drawn together, as if the years apart had only deepened the bond neither could deny. They met in quiet places, cafes filled with the soft hum of conversation, park benches shaded by old trees, places where the noise of the world faded and only their story remained. Every moment was filled with a cautious hope, a fragile beginning that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. David looked at Sarah across the table, her eyes bright despite the weariness they both carried. "It's strange," he said, "how life brings you back to what you thought you lost forever." His fingers traced the rim of his coffee cup. "I keep wondering why it took so long for us to find our way back." Sarah smiled softly, but her gaze was serious. "Maybe because we needed to grow, to understand what love really means. It's not just about being together. It's about knowing who you are when you're with someone else." She reached across and took his hand, their fingers entwining like old friends reconnecting. "And maybe we weren't ready before. But now now I feel like we can try." David nodded, his heart aching with memories and possibilities. There's so much to catch up on, so many things left unsaid. He paused, searching for the right words. Like why I never stopped thinking about you, or how I carried the pain of losing you every day. Sarah's eyes shimmered with tears. I felt the same. The silence between us was louder than any words could ever be. She took a deep breath. "That letter was my last hope, to tell you the truth when I couldn't say it in person." David squeezed her hand gently. "And I'm grateful you didn't give up, even when the world kept us apart." Their conversations stretched long into the evenings, filled with stories of what had been and dreams of what could still be. They talked about the future, knowing it wouldn't be easy. There were obstacles, questions from friends and family, the bride who had been caught in the middle, the uncertainty of rebuilding a life that had once been broken. But amidst the challenges, a new strength emerged. David and Sarah discovered that love wasn't about perfection. It was about forgiveness, resilience, and the courage to face whatever came next. Each day was a step forward, a piece of the puzzle they were slowly putting back together. One afternoon, as they walked through the park, David stopped and looked at Sarah with a seriousness that made her heart skip. "I don't want to rush anything," he said carefully, "but I need you to know. This time, I want to fight for us. Not just for the memories, but for the life we can build." Sarah's smile was radiant, lighting up the shaded path they walked. "I want that too. No more running, no more doubts." She paused, then added softly, "I believe we can make it if we're honest and patient." The wind rustled through the leaves as they continued their walk, hands clasped tightly. They knew the road ahead would be winding and unpredictable, but for the first time in a long time, they felt ready to face it, together. Back home, David kept the letter folded carefully in his drawer. It was a symbol of their past, a reminder of how fate had brought them back. But more than that, it was a testament to a love that refused to fade. Sarah, too, felt a quiet peace settling in her heart. The chaos of that day, the crashing into the wrong wedding, the tears, the shock, was now just a chapter in their story. What mattered most was the next page they were about to write side by side. Their journey wasn't about undoing the past, but about embracing the present with open hearts. And in that acceptance, they found something beautiful, a chance not just to reunite, but to truly begin again. Weeks slipped by, each day weaving David and Sarah closer together. Yet the shadows of the past still lingered, whispering doubts they couldn't ignore. The world around them was watching, waiting to see if their love could survive the storm it had weathered. Friends and family began asking questions, soft inquiries wrapped in concern, some curious, others wary. Could this rekindled flame burn bright enough to outshine years of silence and pain? One evening, As they sat by the fireplace in David's modest living room, the weight of expectation settled between them. Sarah traced the rim of her glass, eyes thoughtful. "Have you told anyone else about us?" she asked quietly. David shook his head. "Not yet. I'm afraid of how people will react. Some might not understand, especially her. Your place in all of this. I don't want to hurt anyone unnecessarily." Sarah nodded, understanding the delicate balance they needed to maintain. We can't live in fear of judgment forever. If we want a future, we have to face the truth, one step at a time. David sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're right. But it won't be easy. I worry about the bride, the woman I was about to marry. I don't want to cause her pain." Sarah's gaze softened. "She deserves honesty. But so do we. Maybe if we're upfront, it will help everyone heal." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. It was Emma, the bride, standing quietly, her eyes searching theirs. She had come not to accuse or demand, but to understand. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice steady despite the tremor beneath. David and Sarah exchanged a glance before nodding, inviting her inside. Emma settled on the couch, folding her hands nervously. "I won't pretend this isn't painful, but I needed to know why this happened, why Sarah showed up at the wedding." David took a deep breath. "We were in love once. Life pulled us apart before we could say goodbye. The letter Sarah sent never reached me. She thought I had forgotten her, but seeing her again, it brought everything back." Emma nodded slowly, absorbing the truth. "I appreciate your honesty. It's a lot to process." She looked at Sarah. "I hope you both find the happiness you deserve." The room held a fragile peace, a quiet understanding that no one wanted to be the villain in this story. After Emma left, David and Sarah sat in silence, the weight of the conversation settling in. "We did the right thing," Sarah said finally. "It's painful, but it's honest." David nodded. Honesty is the only way forward. Days turned into weeks as David and Sarah navigated the delicate dance of rebuilding their lives. They faced whispers, sideways glances, and moments of doubt, but their bond grew stronger with every challenge. The wounds of the past began to heal, replaced by a hopeful future. One afternoon, Sarah surprised David with a small, wrapped box. Inside was a delicate locket, engraved with a simple message: second chances. David's eyes glistened as he fastened it around her neck. "It's perfect, just like this chance we have." Sarah smiled, her heart full. "No matter what comes next, we'll face it together." Under the vast sky, two souls, once lost, had found their way back. Their love was no longer a secret or a whisper. It was a story of resilience, forgiveness, and hope. And as they walked hand in hand toward whatever awaited them, they knew this time they wouldn't let go. David woke early, the morning light filtering softly through the curtains. His mind buzzed with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The journey he and Sarah were on was unlike anything he had imagined, filled with joy but also the heavy weight of the past. Today felt different, though a quiet promise lingered in the air, as if the universe was nudging them forward. Sarah joined him at breakfast, her smile bright but tinged with nervous excitement. "I've been thinking," she said, stirring her coffee gently. "Maybe it's time we shared our story, not just with the people close to us, but more openly. We can't keep hiding, hoping no one will judge us." David nodded slowly. "I agree. The silence has been suffocating. Maybe telling the truth will free us both." They decided to start small, inviting a few trusted friends over for an honest conversation. As the afternoon sun warmed the room, familiar faces gathered, curiosity and concern written on their expressions. David and Sarah took turns sharing their journey, the lost years, the unanswered letters, the unexpected reunion. The room was silent for a moment after their story ended, Then questions and emotions poured out. Some friends expressed surprise, others offered support, and a few struggled to understand. But through it all, David and Sarah felt a sense of relief. Finally, the truth was out, and they weren't alone anymore. Weeks later, their story began to spread beyond their circle. Social media picked up on the tale, a woman crashing the wrong wedding, only to reunite with her first love. The headline captured hearts, sparking conversations about lost love and second chances. David and Sarah faced the spotlight cautiously. The attention brought new challenges, judgment from strangers, invasive questions, and moments when the past seemed to close in. Yet it also brought unexpected kindness, messages from people who had experienced similar heartbreak, encouragement from strangers moved by their courage. One evening, as they scrolled through the messages, Sarah leaned into David's shoulder. "Look at all these stories. We're not alone." David smiled, squeezing her hand. "No, we're not. And maybe this is why we were meant to find each other again, to give hope to others." Their relationship deepened in ways they hadn't expected. The trials had forged a bond stronger than time or distance. They began making plans, not rushed, but deliberate, to build a future together. A small house on the outskirts of town, quiet evenings by the fire, and the chance to create new memories without the shadows of the past. But life, as always, was unpredictable. One afternoon, David received a phone call that shook him to his core. His mother was ill, seriously. The news was a harsh reminder that time was fragile and unpredictable. Sarah stood by his side, steady and unwavering. "We'll face this together," she said softly. David took comfort in her strength. The coming days were filled with hospital visits, difficult conversations, and the raw reality of family bonds. But through it all, Sarah remained his anchor, her presence a balm to his weary soul. As the weeks passed, David's mother began to recover. The experience deepened David's appreciation for the preciousness of life and the importance of holding on to love while you can. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, David took Sarah's hand. "I don't know what tomorrow holds," he said quietly, "but I do know that I want to face it with you." Sarah smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Me too. No matter what." In the end, their story was not just about crashing the wrong wedding or lost letters. It was about the enduring power of love, the courage to forgive, and the strength to begin again, even when the future is uncertain. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, David and Sarah embraced the beautiful unknown together. Months passed, and David and Sarah's life began to settle into a new rhythm, one woven with both the familiar warmth of rekindled love and the fresh excitement of uncharted possibilities. Their small house, nestled at the edge of town, became a sanctuary where past pains softened into lessons, and hope blossomed in quiet moments. One crisp autumn morning, David awoke to the scent of cinnamon and fresh coffee. Sarah was already in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared breakfast. The simple domestic scene was a world away from the chaos of their past, yet every smile they shared carried the weight of their journey, the heartbreak, the lost years, and now the promise of forever. David joined her, and as they sat down, he reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "You know," he said with a smile, "I never imagined we'd be here, together like this." Sarah squeezed his hand, her eyes bright. "Neither did I. But I'm grateful every day we found our way back." She paused, then added softly, "I think we're ready for the next step." David's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" She looked at him, hope shining in her gaze. "I want us to build a family, a life filled with more than just second chances. I want to create new memories with you." He smiled, overwhelmed by the thought. "I want that too, more than anything." Their conversations grew deeper, filled with dreams and plans for a future neither had dared to hope for before. They spoke of children, of celebrations, of growing old together, not as strangers who lost time, but as partners who had fought for their love and won. Yet, even as their hearts opened to the future, they remained mindful of the lessons the past had taught them. They vowed to communicate openly, to cherish every moment, and to never take their second chance for granted. One evening, under a sky sprinkled with stars, David surprised Sarah with a small box. Inside was a simple ring, no grand diamonds, just a circle of silver, symbolizing their unbroken bond. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice steady but full of emotion. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she nodded. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Their wedding was quiet and intimate, a stark contrast to the chaotic day when Sarah had crashed the wrong ceremony. This time, surrounded by loved ones who had witnessed their journey, David and Sarah vowed to cherish each other forever, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The years that followed were filled with laughter, occasional tears, and the steady building of a life they had fought so hard to claim. Their love became a testament to the power of forgiveness, resilience, and hope, a story shared and celebrated by those who knew them. Sometimes, when they sat on their porch watching the sunset, David would turn to Sarah and say, "I never thought crashing that wedding would lead us here." Sarah would smile, leaning into him. "Neither did I, but I'm glad it did." And in that simple truth, they found peace, the kind that comes not from perfect lives, but from hearts brave enough to find each other again and to hold on no matter what.